Thank you very much. So last year, the pro temp of the Liberian Senate and plenary commissioned a special investigation into the destination inspection contract between MedTech Scientific Liberia and the government of Liberia. So we did that investigation and then forwarded the recommendations to the president for implementation. In those recommendations, we proposed the renegotiation of the contract, the recovery of government funds, full reconciliation of accounts, audit by the General Auditing Commission, immediate opening of the transfer account, strengthening of procurement oversight and mechanisms, capacity building for procurement, public disclosure of investigation results, and further legislative oversight until the MedTech contract is concluded. So this is just one aspect of the litany of recommendations that special investigation presented to plenary committee to the president. So yes, thank you. I believe there will be further actions going forward, but today we want to focus on the compliance audit that was conducted by the GAC. So at this point, we'll ask the Auditor General to please, give us a summary of his findings to be followed by questions and answers. Mr. Auditor General. Just so you know, we couldn't project this because of cable issues, but the Auditor General has been kind enough to give Senators copies of his presentation. We assume that LRA and MedTech both have copies of the audit report and we've had the opportunity to review it. MTS does not have a copy of the audit report. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the invitation. Like you said, consistent with the request from the Liberian Senate a couple of months ago, the General Auditing Commission was instructed to perform a compliance audit on the concession contract between MedTech Scientific Limited and the Liberia Revenue Authority. Consistent with the mandate of the Office of the Auditor General, that gives our office the authority to audit all public funds. We accepted the request and performed the audit. So in very brief summary, I will state the details, some of the details of the findings as a result of the audit, which can serve as a platform for further discussions. Thank you. The first major finding as a result of the audit was non-remittance of GOL revenue. So as part of the audit, we analyzed the contract, which indicated that out of the total DI inspection fees collected as a result of performance of destination inspection activities by MedTech, 80% of said funds are due to MedTech for the performance of these DI services, and the remaining 20% should be remitted to the Liberian Revenue Authority. When we performed the audit, we found out that about $6.7 million was remitted to the Liberian Revenue Authority as a result of the 20% fees. But we indicated in the report that those funds were used for LRA operations. In our mind, non-compliant with the Public Financial Management Act and associated regulations. if you look at Regulation B1 of the Public Financial Management Act, it is clear that public institutions that are allowed to collect funds on behalf of the government of Liberia should retain those funds except where a legislation mandates that institution to utilize the funds. In this case, there was no such regulation that mandated the Liberian Revenue Authority to utilize the funds from the DI inspection, including the contract between MedTech and Limited and the Liberian Revenue Authority. Also, as part of the LRA budget that will review the annual budget for the periods under audit, we did not see the 20% share of revenue due to the government of Liberia being disclosed as part of LRA's budget. So as we indicated in the audit, the LRA should have accounted for the $6.7 million that was utilized for its own operations, and going forward, the LRA should facilitate full remittance of the total 20% collected on behalf of the government of Liberia to the consolidated accounts. I show at some point the LRA will state the reason given in the report. In summary, they indicated that they classified the funds as a custom related fees, and that they were under obligation to use that for custom capacity building. We disagree with that in response to the LRA response given as part of the audit. And we indicated clearly that there should be amended either through the budget law or another regulation that authorizes the Liberian Revenue Authority to utilize said funds. The second major finding was non-adherence to transitory account deposit requirements. So again, as part of the audit and to facilitate transparency over the collection and subsequent remittances of the funds collected by MedTech and Limited for the performance of DI services, the contract clearly spelled out the creation of a transitory account. The transitory account was to be created for the purpose of ensuring that all funds collected for DI services should be remitted in the transitory account, and that there should be a standing order on the accounts for subsequent remittance of 80% of the funds to MedTech and 20% to the Liberian Revenue Authority. We observed during the course of the audit that the transitory account was not open, that the funds were exclusively collected by MedTech, that the funds were retained by MedTech until up to August, up to June 2024, and that the LRA was intermittently requesting funds from MedTech for custom capacity development services and other operational uses non-compliant with the terms and conditions of the contract. So as we indicated in the audit report, the Liberian Revenue Authority should facilitate the immediate opening of the transitory accounts with EcoBank as spelled out in the terms and conditions of the contract, that total funds from the DI inspection should be comprehensively remitted to the transitory account for subsequent distribution between MedTech and the LRA. There was also a difference between the total funds confirmed by MedTech, because we indicated to you, Senator, we saw the response from your letter to our MedTech indicating that they were not contacted during the course of the audit. That information is not entirely true. We contacted MedTech during the performance of the audit. MedTech cooperated to the best of our knowledge with the audit. They responded to confirmation statements as to how much they collected as 40% share and how much they also subsequently related to the LRA as well. But there was an outstanding difference of $770,000 between what the LRA had accounted for and what MedTech had indicated as part of their confirmation statement. And we also asked that the LRA should have accounted for that fund as part of the audit. The third finding was transaction with all adequate supporting documents. So of course, consistent with the Public Financial Management Act and associated regulations, all transactions, except for a few mentioned in the regulations, which are debt service payments, should be supported by adequate supporting documentation, including payment vouchers, contracts where applicable, delivery orders, and other procurement-related documentation. During the course of the audit, we found out that about $2.2 million of those transactions were not supported by the relevant supporting documentation. We brought it to the attention of the LRA. They subsequently provided some documentation towards this, but there was still outstanding documentation in excess of $1 million that have not been provided for audit purposes as well. And so we recommended that going forward, all supporting documentation should be, all transactions, financial transactions of the Liberian Revenue Authority should be supported by the adequate supporting document consistent with the Public Financial Management Acts and associated regulations, and that to facilitate adequate record keeping in addition to the hard copies of these documents that are maintained on files, the LRA should establish an electronic document management system by scanning all of these documents and ensure that the electronic copies are maintained. So in instances where the physical copies or the hard copies cannot be provided for audit and review purposes, the electronic copies can suffice. We also saw non-compliance with the approved fee structure. So as at the time of the signing of the contract, there was an approved fee structure that was put in place, signed by all authority, signed by all the stakeholders, LRA, can I go ahead, sir? So, Chairman? Yeah. So, and as part of the audit, we validated, we attempted to validate the compliance or the execution of the approved fee structure. But during the audit, we observed that the approved fee structure per the contract was not applied. We further requested to obtain whether there was an addendum to the contract to support the non-execution of the approved fee structure per the contract, but there was no addendum provided to us for audit purposes. As part of what we also observed was that all fees generated by MedTech for the purpose of this contract up to $190, the government of Liberia was not entitled to a dime. Again, non-compliant with the terms and conditions of the contract, because the contract was clear that based on the fee structure, the government of Liberia was entitled to 20% of all destination inspection services. And so we requested for the addendum, and and that the LRA should provide us why the approved fee structure had not been implemented as approved. The responses to the audit report indicated that there was a stakeholder undocumented agreement between the government of Liberia and the LRA as a result of an OCRA by small business holders. And so it was agreed on a gentleman basis, because for us auditors, we rely on evidence when we are performing our audit. So it was agreed among the stakeholders that they should revert to a previous fee structure agreement that existed between the LRA and some other party. And that is the fee structure as at the time of the audit that was being executed. So we recommended, one, that the LRA should immediately inform MedTech to revert to the approved fee structure, or an addendum to the initial contract should be developed, approved by the relevant authorities, so that full compliance to the terms and conditions of the law should be in place. We also observed that there were a number of contract deliverables, that the terms and conditions of the contract that were not implemented. As part of the contract, MedTech should have provided a number of ICT infrastructure to the Liberian Revenue Authority to aid the LRA in performance of custom-related activities. These infrastructure were intended to build the capacity of the custom division of the LRA to be able to effectively perform destination inspection services and other custom-related activities. The full listing of those deliverables are cataloged in our audit report as part of our findings. If I can get a few of them, 3D stationary container scanner, 3D mini barrel baggage and box on pallet scanner, software automatically linking scanner container number and image result to DL, manifest cross-referencing during processing of declaration, forklift for unstuffing, and closed circuit television. These were some of the ICT or other custom-related equipment that should have been provided as a result of the contract, but there was no evidence that these deliverables were implemented as at the time of the audit. Again, the LRA responded by indicating that as a result of the dispute between or the current case or litigation between involving the DI contract, which was at the level of the Supreme Court based on their responses, and the adjustment of the fee structure, MedTech had been unable to implement some of these deliverables. So we again recommended that going forward, the LRA should ensure full execution of the contract consistent with the terms and conditions of the contract, that these deliverables that should have been implemented by MedTech should be implemented consistent with the terms and conditions of the contract. We also observed that there was no evidence of bank reconciliation statements. Again, it was important for the LRA management to prepare monthly bank reconciliation statements for the transitory account that should have been established, to clearly validate as to whether the 20% share of revenue that is due the government of Liberia was being received by the government of Liberia. In the absence of these bank reconciliation statements, detection of errors and misstatement relative to the collection of DI inspection funds will be significantly impaired. So we recommended as part of the audit that monthly bank reconciliation statements should be prepared and the evidence of these statements should be adequately documented and filed for future review and audit purposes. There were also some irregularities we observed during the construction of the DI site in Liberian County. So there was a destination inspection site constructed by the Liberian Revenue Authority in Liberian County. The first discrepancy is that as part of the contract, all DI sites constructed should have been funded by MedTech Limited and not the LRA. So the LRA constructed this DI site in Nimba using funding from the 20% share of government revenue, non-compliant with the contract. The second observation.
So the inspection site should have been constructed by MedTech from their 80%.
Yeah. Okay. But it was rather constructed by the LRA from the 20%. The second observation was that the DI sites that were due to be constructed based on the terms and conditions of the contract did not include construction of a DI site in Nimba. There were other counties listed, but Nimba was not one of them. They had the contract. But the DI site was constructed in Nimba. And then we found out that the procurement processes involving the execution of leading to the construction of the DI site was not competitive, which means that they require procedures per the Public Procurement Concession Act were not followed in hiring the contractor to construct the DI site. The contract was also arbitrarily increased from 197,000 to 269,000 without evidence of an approved addendum to the contract. So these were some of the irregularities that we noticed, and we, as part of the recommendation, asked the LRA to account for the increase in the contract and why they did not comply with the Public Procurement Act to facilitate competitive procurement processes during the execution of the contract. And we also requested that they should provide justification why the construction of the DI site was facilitated by funds collected by methods remitted to LRA, the 20% share, non-consistent with the terms and conditions of the contract. But again, the responses were based on the restructuring of the approved fees, which we already indicated were non-compliant with the terms and conditions of the contract. The last two findings were basically on different committees that should have been set up to aid in the smooth implementation of the contract, the compliance contract. As at the time of the audit, we saw no evidence of the implementation of the working committee. The working committee was important to the contract. The working committee was to be established to facilitate discussions at the very highest level on DI implementation services between authorities of the LRA and MedTech. But as at the time of the audit, we obtained no evidence. When we raised this issue in the report, the LRA did provide us meeting minutes of a single meeting that was held in 2023. But the terms of the contract indicated that the committee should meet on a monthly basis, and we only obtained a single evidence of a meeting, which was even provided, like I indicated, after we sent our draft report to the LRA. The final finding was the lack of a stakeholder forum. It was also as part of the contract that a stakeholder forum should be organized by the Nigeria Revenue Authority to facilitate discussions among stakeholders relevant for the smooth implementation of the contract agreements. As at the time of the audit, we have obtained no evidence of this stakeholder forum. When we sent the draft management letter to the LRA, they provided us again a single minute of a quarterly stakeholder forum that was implemented. So as a result of these findings, Mr. Chair and distinguished senators, we issue an adverse opinion or conclusion, because this was a compliance audit. The adverse conclusion is what I usually refer to in non-audit accounting terms, either the second to the last worst. We issue an adverse
The follow-up is very critical here. Sorry.
So we issue an adverse conclusion. The best opinion or conclusion we usually issue in our report is an unqualified opinion if it's a financial statement audit, or an unqualified conclusion if it's a compliance audit, which means that to the best of our knowledge, based on our investigation, there were no significant deviation relative to the terms and conditions of the contract. If we notice an exception, or at most two exceptions, which were not material and pervasive or very significant, again in non-accounting and audit terms, then we issue what we call a qualified conclusion or opinion. In this case, based on the findings of this report, we observed that there were major deviations observed in the execution of the contract, and so we issue what we call the adverse conclusion. And we made similar presentation to the LRA management and indicated that our audit follow-up team was going to immediately work with them to provide additional understanding where maybe our findings were not clearly understood, or may not have been clearly understood by the LRA management, and to provide a platform for the follow-up on the implementation of our recommendations as well. The reports were subsequently published on our website, and of course it becomes public information. So I will stop at this point. If there are additional questions or concerns, we will respond to them accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Auditor General, for that presentation. I think it was very clear, captured the audit report. So at this juncture, we will now like to get responses from the auditees, LRA and MedTech. MedTech stated that they didn't get a copy of the audit report. So did you communicate a copy to them, or LRA, did you share a copy with them?
No, as part of our procedures, we share a copy of our report with our principal reporting authority, which is the legislature. We usually give the management that we audit a copy of the report. The Office of the President also received a copy and then we publish on our website, so it becomes public information for any stakeholder, but we did not send a copy of the report to MedTech.
Thank you. All right.
If we got a copy or?
Oh, not a copy. It
Oh.
will respond to.
Oh, yeah,
the
okay. Okay, thank you.
Observation.
Let me preface my observations by clarifying here that this administration came into power and appointed me, and I took office in March of 2024. So this contract had been consummated long before the arrival of this administration. Many of the issues that the Auditor General pointed out that existed before the arrival of this administration. We had come.
Yes.
Witness, did you get this submission made by the auditor?
We got the
Auditor General.
Auditor General.
So your response indeed was prepared differently.
Yes.
Can we have it?
Oh no, I'm just going to speak. I brought some files and I will share those files.
Yeah, you will take note.
Yeah.
I think what my colleague was also trying to get, do you agree with the Auditor General's adverse opinion?
Not entirely.
Okay.
Not in its entirety. There are many parts of it that we agree to, but we don't agree to all of it.
Continue.
Yes. So like I will clarify, we had appeared before this August committee, in fact the entire plenary last year on these very same issues. And many of the, some of the issues that were highlighted by the Auditor General were things that had already come to the fore before this August body. Let me start by responding to the items one at a time. As you heard the Auditor General explain, he questioned the basis for LRA to retain the funds collected from this contract.
The 20%.
The 20%, yes. And this is one of the places that we disagree with the Auditor General. During the exit meeting, we pointed this out to the Auditor General. In his own presumption, he indicated that all government revenues have to be remitted to the consolidated account unless there are other provisions of law that warrants otherwise. And this legislature, in its wisdom, in the Revenue Code, in section 1822, actually grants the LRA the right to collect these custom services fee and use them for custom capacity building. So we pointed this out to the Auditor General, but he wouldn't accept the provisions of 1822 of the Revenue Code. So I guess it is the legislature that have given us this right. So I guess that question is not really a question of the LRA, it's actually a question of the powers of the legislature. And you are best placed to address that. On the second point that the Auditor General raised, the non-adherence to the transitory account. Yes, we agree with the Auditor General 100%. And we have indicated this to the legislature before, that under the old administration, what we inherited, the records we inherited, shows that after the DR contract was signed, we saw a letter from the former Commissioner General to MedTech, requesting MedTech to ignore the pricing structure indicated in the contract because of public outcry and because the government had agreed to revert to like the Auditor General mentioned, to the fee structure that existed under a previous contract with BVAC. At the time, the BVAC contract rate was 190, the 20-foot continuum. So the understanding reached, as we understand it, by the old administration, was that MedTech insisted that any amount below the 190 or up to the 190, the LRA will not get a share of 20%, and that the 20% will only be computed on amounts higher than the 190. This is what we inherited as a government. And when you made a recommendation, when the committee made a recommendation to the president, the cabinet reviewed it and was then mandated to renegotiate the contract with MedTech so as to cure. This is one of the key defects that need to be cured. And let me just pause here because this is something we'll come back to. We have not made, I will update the August body on the progress made so far since those recommendations were communicated by the Senate to the President. But there is one aspect that we haven't moved on yet, which is the renegotiation. That's because the ownership, the validity of the ownership, there has been an internal feud within MedTech, and this matter has rested with the Supreme Court until just last week that we received a final notice from the Supreme Court that the matter has been resolved, and that now I think one party made a settlement to the other party. So beginning today, we are actually just beginning today making starting the renegotiation process. So this is one of those things that we are going to secure as we negotiate to ensure that there is indeed.
So with this announcement, the whole MedTech arrangement now, the government is dealing with only one party.
Yes. Yeah, and let me just share with you, the Senator.
Mr. Chairman, I want to get the witness back. Those issues are issues that I think he's saying. I want to hear his response to the Auditor General report.
Okay.
So at that point, yeah, I think.
Okay, let me focus on that.
Let's focus on that. Later on, we can, that's a revenue issue.
Okay.
For the purpose of this, let's go back.
Okay, so on the second count of the findings, like we said, we agree with the Auditor General, and we are working now to ensure that we cure that. Payment without adequate supporting document. Again, here, there are several parts to this.
Payments or transaction?
Okay,
go ahead.
So here, there are several parts to it. One part is that, like I explained previously, and he noted in his report, the LRA had authorized MedTech to keep its share.
Do you agree with that, or you don't agree with that? First, and then you can agree.
Yes, partially agree. There's certain aspect of it that we don't agree to. And let me speak to the parts that we agree to. So, the LRA had requested, in the same letter I referenced earlier, the MedTech to keep its funding, and that they will make authorizations for MedTech to do the procurement of items on LRA's behalf. This is what happened until this government came into effect. Now, under those arrangements, LRA was not the one doing the procurement, and as such, could not have followed the due diligence processes enshrined in the procurement laws because they were not executing the procurement. These are the records that we've seen on the books. Since our ascendancy, we have now moved the money to our away from MedTech. And the specific issues I like to speak about when the Auditor General says that there were.
What did you move the money to?
We moved the money. We asked the Ministry of Finance to create an account.
Transfer account?
No.
Okay.
An LRA account
Okay.
at EcoBank. So that is where our 20% is being deposited as we speak.
20%.
20%, yes, that's what the contract says. Is it 20%? It's not a transitory account. Because like I said, to create the transitory account, we need to kill the contract first. We need to renegotiate the terms of the contract. Because to get into any further arrangement, we needed to know which side of MedTech we will have to deal with. And this is the matter that has been pending before the Supreme Court until recently. Now that that matter is resolved, we are now engaging with MedTech to make sure that we can clear up issues like creating a transitory account. And that is one of the things that will make sure that happens. But because MedTech had been previously authorized under the old administration to keep LRA's money, the first step we did, as soon as we took over, and when the accounts were unfrozen, was to move MedTech's share of the money to an account, to a Government of Liberia account duly created by the Ministry of Finance. So as we,
Who froze the account? The accounts were frozen?
okay, again, that's why I wanted to give some context, and you say speak to only the Auditor
This is
General
coming
report.
up to this matter.
So LRA requested MedTech to keep its share, its 20% share. This is what we inherited. By the time the government came into power, this government came into power, there was already a Supreme Court order freezing MedTech's account, emanating from the conflict within MedTech. As a result of that, when the government took over, MedTech itself didn't even have access to its own account. So when the Supreme Court lifted that freeze,
I'm interested in the 20%. That's what I'm interested in.
that's why this
And I just want to know who gave the authority to freeze government Liberia accounts?
it was the court.
Okay,
This was a court order.
okay.
So the court order, when this government came into power, the Justice Ministry then represented the government at the Supreme Court, and the court lifted the ban on MedTech's funding. And once that happened, then we asked the Ministry of Finance to create an account for LRA, a Government Liberia account, to move our 20% from MedTech and put it in that account. So as we speak, the government share, LRA share, that 20% is currently being deposited in that account at EcoBank. So MedTech is no longer keeping it.
So you still collecting fees, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The fees are still being collected.
Okay.
So like I was saying, on the parts that I don't agree with the Auditor General, and he has a table, I just need to go over those items one by one. I'm going to the table where it shows the itemized list of things that the Auditor General highlighted as payments without sufficient documentation. Okay. One of them is a payment that was made to the Liberia Telecommunications Corporation, the TEPO, for internet services. And among the documents that the Auditor General is saying we didn't present includes business registration and tax clearance, among other things. We pointed out to the Auditor General that LibTEPO is a government entity and as such does not require tax clearance or business registration certificate. But the auditor still decided to maintain this item in his list of things that we didn't provide for. He also highlighted, come again?
The payment was how much?
The payment was $71,154. He also questioned another payment of $40,252. Come again? Yes.
I wanted to do more listening before I ask questions, but I don't want to get lost with that.
Good, go ahead.
Did I hear you right that a government institution does not require tax clearance?
Business registration and then business registration.
So what makes the entity a business or
Because it is created by an act of legislature. And LibTEPO is one such public corporation that is created by an act of legislature and so does not require business registration.
I don't know.
Okay.
Thank you.
And there were several payments also to LibTEPO for internet services that the Auditor General insists were not done properly. Another payment that he questions is a payment of $175,000 for Starlink devices. And we need to give you context around this. This was a purchase that was done on a World Bank project under the PFMU at the Ministry of Finance. The project was ending, less than about a month to end, and there was some money that was left over and about to go. So when the exit mission came to Liberia, I pointed out to them that look, we need these devices So it doesn't make sense for Liberia to lose this money as if we don't have need for the money. And they told me that if we could get the devices in Liberia before the 30th of that month, which will be the window for the project to remain open, the World Bank will reimburse this amount. So the 175,000 was paid for 50 of the Starlink devices, and that payment included, I think, about 12 or 13,000 for the first 3 months of subscription for Starlink. The actual amount for the devices were remitted back. LRA got refunded by the World Bank project. The Auditor General, even though we explained this to the Auditor General, the Auditor General is insisting that we didn't have procurement plan. We didn't do this one. We asked him, Auditor, how can I do procurement plan for something that is actually being purchased under a World Bank project? I'm just front loading this so that we can be able to capture this money for the benefit of Liberia.
World Bank pay you back?
World Bank pay us back,
I
yes.
mean, LRA purchases.
The reimburse us, so it means that the World Bank purchases.
World Bank reimburses.
Yes, World Bank reimburse us.
Okay.
Yeah, but the Auditor General is insisting that we didn't have procurement plan, we didn't have contract in place. This is what Mr. Auditor General.
So when you were paid back, that money reflected in
They
your
reflected in the account before the audit period.
DG,
Yes, sir.
did you have a procurement plan? Yes or no?
For this item?
Yes.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah. No. Because
You said
No,
because of the
no,
circumstances.
no, we're not looking at the circumstances. The Auditor General is saying, because you see there are things,
Go one by one with the question.
there are issues that you are saying to us, you disagree, you agree in part. This particular aspect you are describing didn't have a procurement plan. And whatever the circumstances was, the Auditor General is saying to you, you didn't have a procurement plan. Do you agree with him or you disagree with him? Did you have
we disagree because it wasn't required.
okay.
We weren't doing the procurement, it was the World Bank that was doing the procurement.
So you
We
didn't
just needed to get it in the country before the end of that month so that
you
World Bank
spend money, but it was
in
not
advance
your
the
project
World
to
Bank
spend
will pay.
money.
Yes.
Before you leave that subject, was there adequate documentation suggesting that you were using this money to front load to be reimbursed later on at the World Bank?
Yes.
Did you submit that to the Auditor General?
Yes. The email transactions and everything with the project office, all of those things were communicated.
Continue.
Are we to make
So, yeah, you'll come back.
Let him finish
Yeah,
with this.
That's what I'm saying.
This list.
Yeah. Let the,
Let the Director General finish, and then you will come back. Commissioner General.
So there was a second payment.
yeah.
The first payment to the telco was in August. There was a second payment to the telco of 72,000 on the 23rd of October. And again, similar argument. I didn't have, business registration and tax clearance, and it didn't have procurement plan. And now, we noticed that there's a table, there are actually 2 tables in the Auditor General's report that appear to be repeating some of the entries that we just spoken about. Because this 175 that I spoke to about the Starlink payment, we see it is in the second table as well. So this may be a result of double counting, which maybe the Auditor General will be able to clarify. The other issue that we try to explain to the Auditor General during the audit meeting is that at the end of the year, in December, because of the very good performance of the staff, we decided to use some of the money from the MedTech funds to actually give the staff cash amount of $225 each for their Christmas food and other things. But we restricted them. They have met among themselves and selected, I think, 3 or 4 business places where they could go and get these things. So we got coupons, and we gave the coupons to the staff that were teamable at one of these business places. So the staff went there, took the goods, and in return for the coupons, we then accumulated the payments, and then we pay the vendors for this Christmas package that we had given to the staff. Again, the Auditor General queried this. The Auditor General said, oh, well, You're making payment to these vendors without procurement plan, all of that. So we explained to the Auditor General that we're giving cash to staff. We can make procurement plan for cash, because to do procurement means you have to predetermine the items that you want to buy, the quantities that you want to buy, and agree to a price. But we're giving the staff the freedom. Now we'll give them the cash coupon so that each person will have the freedom to go to these stores and take whatever they wanted for their household, because everybody's needs will not be the same. So even buy rice, we couldn't determine whether somebody prefer burger wing or somebody prefer something else. So we gave the cash coupon to the staff, and then once they expended the cash coupon, then we went and collected them and reimbursed the businesses in the value that the staff has taken. But the Auditor General still said that you will have to indicate this in his report because we didn't provide, we provide to the employees. Again, some of the other things there are payments, most of the other things are payments for the chapel. There was also another payment, I'm looking for it, with the Auditor General flag. And it's important to also emphasize that the DR site that was constructed, and we'll speak to that in more details when we speak to the particular point, that was constructed in downtown. The payment, there was a final payment outstanding, the project completion payment, the final payment. So when I took over, this payment was due. When the engineer submitted a completion report and all of that, we made our payment. And that was one of the things that the Auditor General captured and said we made this payment without procurement plan and all that. I said, well, Mr. Auditor, this is a payment outstanding from a contract activity that came forward because this was the payment that we had to do when everything was completed. The auditor still decided that he would maintain it. So on the question of the count 2, on the issues with the payment without supporting documents, those are the points that we don't completely accept the findings of the Auditor General's report.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Are there payments in that listing that you believe there was no payment, no adequate documentation for?
Well, the previous administration
Yeah.
made a lot of payments that got explained. I can speak to that one.
No, you have to be able to speak to that because that's part of.
So
that's why I asked the question. The part you didn't agree with.
Yeah.
There's not only the payments you refer to that you disagree with. Are there other payments in that listing?
Yes.
That you disagree with?
Yes.
That you agree with?
That I disagree with.
The one that you agree with, because let's say, for example, the one with the telco. The ones with the telco, you raised. The one with Starlink, you raised. Are there any other payments that was made that you disagree or agree with in that process that didn't have adequate documentation? Okay,
there's a huge component of payments that I can speak to because those payments were made on behalf of LRA by MedTech. And I cannot speak to what documentation MedTech has or MedTech doesn't have. I mean, Oliver is here and Oliver will be able to speak to those. But I'm speaking about payments that we made, especially those ones that made.
Which payment you made as CG?
Yes.
And not speaking to the one that was made to your predecessor?
The ones that were made during my predecessor's administration were all made by MedTech. Because at the time, the funding was held with MedTech. And the administration only made requests to MedTech, and MedTech did the expenditure on LRA's behalf.
So there could be some truth to the fact that payment was made without a procurement plan.
There could be truth to that.
Okay.
There could be truth to that. Yes, Chair.
Yes.